So about 2 years ago, the PS5 was released in a digital and a disc model. The only difference between both models is a single disc drive. Besides that, they both perform exactly the same way. You certainly get the best of both worlds if you decide to go for the disc edition. I personally opted for the digital model 2 years ago, and right now I still have zero regrets. A lot has changed in that time though, which I'll be going over along with my experience with the console in general. Something that hasn't changed since I picked up the digital console is how much I prefer the design to that of the disc. One of the reasons I chose the digital edition is because of that symmetrical and the minimal look. To be honest, it just looks a lot cleaner than the disc edition, and that's just my opinion. Compared to when the console first released, there's now lots of faceplate colors as well as designs being sold by PlayStation and other third-party sellers. I switched from the default white plates to dark plates from a third-party seller called D-Brand, and I never changed them after that. Each console comes with a single controller that's white and black in color. That was the only option at launch, but now PlayStation has added a bunch of new colors and even one dedicated to their latest exclusive, God of War Ragnarok. The battery life hasn't improved, but I always keep 2 of them on rotation, so one is always charging. I can usually get between 2 to 3 hours of continuous gameplay on a full charge, which, is okay, but is nothing mind-blowing. I'm still a huge fan of the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback, as well as the speaker and the microphone on the controller. They're all cool and add to the overall next-gen or now current-gen feeling. Out of all of my controllers, my favorite is the black one, and I picked this one up just to match the console. I've personally experienced no issues at all with any of my Dualsense controllers, and I've had a few of them since launch. So nothing like stick drift or even, any of them just dying on me. The only thing that I, kind of dislike about the Dualsense controllers is that the battery cannot be replaced. So when they die out, you're going to have to throw them out. So by now, most of you guys know that the PS5 ships with 1 terabyte of internal storage, with only about 667 being usable, and that fills up extremely quickly. Like games like God of War, for example, will take up easily 80 gigabytes by themselves. Whether you choose to use the disc or a digital edition, you're going to need to consider storage options if you plan to keep more than a handful of games on the system. There's a few options for managing storage space in the console, but the best way that I found is by installing an M.2 NVMe SSD to increase the internal storage of the console. This way is the cleanest, and it'll also let you play PS4 and PS5 games that you've installed on a new drive. The other way to manage storage is by using external SSD or HDD drives, so plugging them in. With external drives, you can't play PS5 games installed on them, but PS5 games can be stored on there for transfer back to the console later. You're going to want to opt for SSDs if you plan to transfer data faster, since HDDs are a lot slower. PS4 games, on the other hand, can be played directly from any drive, so SSD or HDDs. External SSDs and HDDs are also cheaper than M.2 SSDs, but I'll definitely take those over external drives all day. It's a lot cleaner, and you can play all kinds of games directly off those drives. A lot of new features have been added to the user interface of the PS5. One of them, which I've been loving, is called Resume Activity. This lets you jump right back into whatever activity you were engaged in during gameplay. This has come in very handy so many times for quickly getting back into a game. It's not exactly like Quick Resume on the Xbox, but it's pretty similar. There's also game lists for grouping games in your library into different categories. You can have up to 15 of them, and within each one you can have up to a maximum of 100 games. Multitasking is another great feature of the user interface. With that one, you can pin different things to your screen while you game. There's also been a lot of changes made to social features to make it easier to share your gameplay or just socialize in general. The overall user interface still looks great, and things are sectioned off really nicely for easy navigation. Activity cards are displayed in a prominent position right below each game. Each one represents different activity within a game, and they can be jumped right into immediately using Resume Activity. The last thing I've been really enjoying about the user interface is how easy it is to play my Spotify songs or playlists whenever game music is not doing the trick. So by now, I'm sure you guys know that the PS5 can output games at up to 4K at 120 frames per second, but honestly I still haven't played any games that hit that 120 frames per second yet. I usually hover between around 70 and 90 when playing games at their highest performance settings. I was only able to get a steady 119 frames per second when I reduced resolution from 4K to 2K. With consoles like the PS5 or the Series X, you're always going to have to choose between a graphics or a performance mode in any game that offers the options. Graphics modes usually provides the highest quality in terms of resolution, but you'll have to deal with lower frame rates, which means a less smoother gameplay. With performance mode, you get double the frame rates for a much smoother gameplay, but this time you have to sacrifice some resolution. If you didn't already know by now, it's never true 4K when playing in performance mode, but if you play with a TV that uses 4K upscaling tech, then it'll look pretty amazing regardless. Graphics mode is usually around 30 frames per second, while performance mode is usually around 60 frames per second. One feature that's been highly requested and finally came to the console is 1440p support, at least for compatible displays. This will matter to some since 4K is still the higher resolution to play in, but for anyone who uses a monitor with a 2K maximum resolution, playing natively in that resolution is now possible. You can easily check if your monitor or TV is compatible by selecting Test 1440p output in the system settings. Variable refresh rate support has also been added for reducing screen tearing and input lag between the display and the PS5. So with VR turned on, your PS5 will dynamically sync the display's refresh rate with that coming from the console itself. This will in turn lead to a much more fluid gameplay. One thing to note is that VRR will require a compatible HDMI 2.1 display and will depend on if the game that you're playing supports it. You can also turn off this feature in the system settings if you don't want it. The feature can also be turned on for unsupported games from the same place, which might work well or not, but I personally always kept it all on and never noticed any gameplay issues at all. As for some of the best TVs to pair with the PS5, there's lots out there now, but the LG C series OLED TVs have built up a reputation for being one of the best choices. Personally, I've got the LG C2, which I've now used with the PS5 for about half a year. So around the time that the PS5 launched, there was not a lot of options for games to play on it. You know, PS5 games, not PS4 games. But now that we're 2 years in, there's a good amount of choices to pick from. This includes PlayStation exclusives as well as third-party releases. There's a decent amount of PS exclusives that have been released over that period. Some of them include Horizon Forbidden West, Ghost of Tsushima, and the recently released God of War Ragnarok, which honestly I'm still playing through and loving right now. These are, some of the best games that I've played on the console, and I would definitely recommend that people check out, if you haven't already done that. There's also some great selections like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart or even Astro's World, which comes pre-installed into the system, as well as some remasters like Spider-Man and The Last of Us 2. Not a big fan of remasters, but they look good on the PS5. There are lots of third-party games that also look and play great on the console. Some of those include Cyberpunk and Watch Dogs. Recently, PlayStation announced the evolution of their subscription program, Plus now comes in 3 flavors. The first tier is called PlayStation Essential. This is the most basic and retains the same features and price of the old 1-tier system. The second tier is called PlayStation Extra. Personally, I think this provides the best bang for the money. You get access to a growing list of PS4 and PS5 games, as well as all the other features from the first tier. You even get access to Ubisoft Plus games as well. The highest tier is called PlayStation Premium, but honestly does not feel very premium. With this tier selected, you get everything from the lowest tiers with the addition of timed game demos and cloud streaming from PS3 as well as older games. Personally, I feel like those additions are not worth the extra money, or the extra upgrade for premium. So with PlayStation Plus, it's pretty much just like Game Pass now, where you can just play games that you already are subscribed to the program for, games that are a part of sort of a Netflix system. So with PS Plus tiers, you don't need a disc drive. To take it a bit further, PlayStation also added a new loyalty program called PlayStation Stars, which will allow you to complete campaigns, earn points to redeem select games with, and finally show off your digital collectibles which you've acquired through the PS app. So the loyalty program is pretty much exclusive to the PS app. So you can do a bunch of things on the console that you get rewarded for in the app, but you can't really track it or see anything from the console itself, which is kind of annoying so far, but I hope that evolves and becomes a part of the entire system. As for the future of the PS5, it hasn't even reached its half-life yet, so expect Sony to have more in store within the upcoming years. Already planned for release in January next year is the official Dualsense Elite controller called the Dualsense Edge. This one is supposed to allow for more control customization for players that want an edge. I'll warn you guys though that it is not cheap by any means whatsoever. So unless you're an elite player or someone that's competitive or just wants an edge or just wants the coolest controller that PlayStation has to offer, then you might not want to even check it out at all. But I will be doing an unboxing on the channel here as well. There's also the PSVR 2, which is supposed to feature a lot of cutting-edge VR tech. This one has been planned for release in February. I've never actually used VR before, so I'm definitely looking forward to trying this one out as well. God of War Ragnarok was just released, which brought back some life into the PlayStation gaming community again. There's a decent amount of hopefully good releases coming in 2023, and personally, I'm looking forward to games like Hogwarts, Spider-Man 2, Wolverine, and Forspoken. I'm also really hoping that Black Myth and Assassin's Creed Mirage release next year as well, but fingers crossed on those ones. Either way, there's a lot to look forward to, and I'm truly excited for the future of gaming in general. So if you're still struggling between choosing either the disc or the digital edition, here's what you need to know. They both provide the same exact level of performance. The only difference is that one of them has a disc slot and the other one does not. I stopped buying discs for my PS4 long before the PS5 release, so this has worked out great for me. I also hate stacking up on game discs or even swapping them out just to play the next game. If this sounds like you too, then the digital edition might just be what you're looking for. On the other hand, if you prefer to collect your game discs or do trade-ins or wait for a disc to go on sale, then the disc edition is for you. The disc model is certainly a better overall deal since it can be used just like the digital model with the extra option of the disc drive itself. Personally, I'd rather not have that slot collecting dust, so if you ask me now after 2 years if I regret buying the digital edition console, I'll tell you without a doubt that I do not. That's it for this one, folks. Let me know down below which console version you have and also what games you're looking forward to playing within the next year. If you enjoy the video, leave a like below and I will catch you all in my next video. It's Tommy and I'm out, y'all.